August 24th, 1814. Washington, D.C. is falling. The walls are closing in on the American capital. 8 p.m., soldiers march into the city. It's an eerie scene. 100 degrees, the city mostly abandoned. No one left with the authority to officially surrender. Marksmen fire on the troops from a nearby house. In retaliation, the servicemen set fire to the building. Then more buildings in the area. The State Department, the War Department, the Treasury, and the Capitol building. When the brigade arrives at the presidential mansion, the high command enters. They see food and wine laid out for President James Madison's daily afternoon dinner party. The officers eat everything, exit the mansion, and give the command. Soldiers stack furniture, sprinkle it with gunpowder, and set it ablaze. The White House is on fire, put to the torch by America's neighbor to the north, Canada. Or was it? The White House certainly burned in 1814, but the idea that it was Canada who lit the match is less clear. It's an accusation that's been bandied about for years, including one very high-profile example.
Trudeau pressed Trump on how he could justify the tariffs as a quote-unquote national security issue, and this was President Trump's response. Quoting him, "Didn't you guys burn down the White House?"
Though Canada would not exist as a political entity separate from the British Empire until 1867, it was already developing a national identity, an identity that served as a major motivating force in the burning of the White House and the rest of Washington. Like any conflict, there were countless reasons behind the War of 1812, but on one level, it was unquestionably a war of aggression. Top-level American politicians from the time made the argument for conquest, to take over Canada. Former President Thomas Jefferson referred to the annexation of Quebec as a mere matter of marching. Speaker of the House Henry Clay said that the militiamen of Kentucky alone could capture Ontario and Montreal without any help. Also, in 1813, the United States attacked the capital of then-province Upper Canada, a city called York, known today as Toronto. The Americans set fire to several government buildings, including the Legislative Assembly, the Government House, and the home of the Lieutenant Governor. Most provocatively, they burned private property. These insults were fresh in the mind of British commanders as they plotted their next move. The War of the Sixth Coalition had finally brought down Napoleon. Much of the British Empire's forces were now freed up and sent over the Atlantic to support units already prosecuting the war in North America. These new fighters were dispatched along America's Atlantic coast to draw enemy fighters away from Canada. This new offensive was known as the Chesapeake Campaign. In its planning stages, it was British Rear Admiral George Cockburn who proffered the ultimate revenge for York. He wrote to the North American station commander, "I am convinced that within a short period of time, with enough force, we could easily have at our mercy the capital of the United States." Meanwhile, American command was unable to comprehend what was coming, even as forces began to concentrate near the capital. The powers that be believed the British would target Philadelphia or Baltimore. Secretary of War John Armstrong argued that Washington only had a population of 8,000 and some scattered buildings, too unimportant to attack. Finally, though, America's lackluster defense was forced into action during a session between President James Madison and his War Council. A message arrived. British forces were headed for Bladensburg, a town 6 miles northeast of Washington. Mid-meeting, generals scrambled to the battlefront. Madison joined them. The president was even given 2 pistols that he strapped around his waist. From there, he rode to join the Americans stationed at Bladensburg. When he arrived, he rode too far past his forces at first, nearly riding into the British lines, just as the battle erupted. British artillery included a new type of rocket, cutting edge, but uncontrollable. Several were launched at the Americans, hurtling far over Madison's head, making him the first American president to come directly under fire. British High Command, including General Robert Ross and Cockburn, caught the Americans out of position and pressed their charges on, descending on the American capital. America's scattershot force, comprised mostly of local militia, were no match for the professional fighters coming their way. Most ran in a chaotic retreat now known as the Bladensburg Races. With nothing left to stop them, the British soldiers marched directly into Washington, completely unchecked. General Ross's directives were clear. The Americans had burned down Toronto. Now he must demand a ransom or burn Washington down. His orders were revenge. Ross was reluctant. He marched into Washington under a flag of truce, hoping for an orderly surrender. But it was not to be. Riflemen that were part of a militia left behind in the city opened fire. 2 of Ross's men were killed. Ross's own horse was shot dead from under him. Despite his best efforts at restraint, Ross was left with no choice. Washington would be put to the torch. First came the Capitol building. Fires were built inside. At the time, home to the House, Senate, Library of Congress, and the Supreme Court. Meanwhile, the White House prepared for its fate. Still at home in the presidential mansion was the president's wife, Dolley Madison. She was an early influence on crafting the expectations of the president's partner. Dolley Madison would encourage bipartisanship with the American government, often by hosting dinner parties, becoming the first White House to invite members of both parties at once. This day was no different. She led the White House staff in setting a table for 40 people, expecting the president and his top officials. Some rumors have it that this banquet was meant to be a victory party, to celebrate the Americans' presumed win over their foes. But Dolley Madison's plans were interrupted by news of the impending invasion. A free black man named James Smith rode to the White House, announcing, "Clear out! Clear out! General Armstrong has ordered a retreat." Dolley Madison snapped into action, demanding that Gilbert Stuart's painting of George Washington be rescued. "Save that picture if possible," she said. "If not possible, destroy it. Under no circumstances, allow it to fall into the hands of the British." Once the First Lady finally departed the White House to safety, vandals descended on the mansion. According to the memoirs of Paul Jennings, an enslaved man laboring at the White House, thieves entered and ransacked the estate, breaking open drawers, taking silver and other valuables, while leaving everything else in a haphazard mess. When the British arrived, they didn't immediately set the White House ablaze. Instead, officers entered the mansion to enjoy Dolley Madison's hospitality. According to one eyewitness, the feast was presented with all matters of finery, several kinds of wine, cut glass decanters. A hearth was set, still cooking, all manner of culinary accoutrements, pots, saucepans, spits loaded with meat. The soldiers had a merry time, eating clumsily and ravenously, and ironically toasting their absent hosts. One soldier toasted the health of Britain's Prince Regent. Another raised a glass to the success of His Majesty's land and naval forces. They drank to peace with America and down with Madison. President Madison had earned enormous vitriol from the British. One soldier found one of the president's tri-cornered hats. He raised it to the tip of his bayonet and said that since they did not capture the little president, they would parade his hat around England. The ransack continued. Sailors ran upstairs, grabbing souvenirs and clothing left behind by the vandals. Admiral Cochrane found souvenirs for himself. He took a hat to remember President Madison by. And as for Mrs. Madison, he took a chair cushion, boasting that by that souvenir, he would remember her seat. Properly sacked, the time was at hand. Over the course of several hours, the battalion expertly prepared the building to burn. They began piling up furniture, including the private possessions of the Madisons, and furniture obtained by Thomas Jefferson in Paris. They soaked all the bedding in the mansion with lamp oil. Their preparations resulted in a fire that ignited instantly and voraciously. Eventually, the interior flooring of the White House collapsed, the fires leaving the building an empty, burned-out shell. The White House had fallen. From there, the British burned more buildings around Washington. The Treasury Building, the buildings housing the War and State Departments. They burned the Washington Arsenal, where an accidental explosion of undetected gunpowder killed 12 men and wounded 30 more. When they laid waste to a newspaper office, Coburn ordered that all the letter C's be removed from the presses so that the newspaper would be unable to slander him further. The Americans contributed to the widespread arson by burning the Navy Yard so that the ships and stores there would avoid falling to the British. It appeared that within hours, Washington, D.C., the American capital and seat of power, would be in ashes. For 50 miles around, the glow of the fires could be seen. According to one resident, "You never saw a drawing room so brilliantly lighted as the whole city was that night. Few thought of going to bed. They spent the night in, gazing on the fires and lamenting the disgrace of the city." Around midnight, as the fires burned, the weather intervened. A storm, thought to be a tornado, took its toll on the already reeling capital. Cold rain splashed on the baking hot masonry, causing further structural damage. All over the city, the storm ripped up trees and rocked buildings from their foundations. While the storm did exacerbate an already perilous situation, it is still often referred to as the storm that saved Washington because it served to hasten a British retreat. When it headed for their forces on Capitol Hill, cannons were tossed around by the winds. Several British troops were killed by debris. As the British prepared to leave, Coburn said to a local woman, "Great God, madame, is this the kind of storm to which you are accustomed in this infernal country?" The lady answered, "No, sir. This is a special interposition of Providence to drive our enemies from our city." After just 29 hours of occupation, British forces left Washington. An expedition of just 4,500 men in only 9 days had infiltrated the enemy's capital and burned it to the ground. All told, it was pitch-perfect revenge for the burning of Canada's then capital, York. George Prevost, Governor-General of the Canadas, said, "As a just retribution, the proud capital at Washington has experienced a similar fate." By the most technical definitions, it wasn't Canada itself that burned down the White House. What's not debatable is that the presidential residence, one of the most recognizable symbols of American power, was set ablaze by a fighting force that fought for Canadians, fought with Canadians, and sought revenge for Canada. Primary sources were essential to bringing you this story, including, in 1814, British forces burned the U.S. Capitol by Joel Achenbach from the Washington Post. White House History Issue Number 4 from the White House Historical Association. The Burning of Washington, the British Invasion of 1814 by Anthony Pitch. Every part of this video was animated, written, voiced over, and produced by real people. All humans, no AI.